Commander Jake Sullivan stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station and watched the alien ships approach Earth. The massive vessels moved through space like silver whales, their hulls reflecting the light from distant stars. Jake had seen many ships in his 20 years with the Earth Defense Coalition, but nothing like these. Each alien craft was 3 times larger than humanity's biggest warship and moved with a grace that made human vessels look clumsy by comparison. That the lead ship requested permission to dock, speaking through translation devices that turned alien sounds into perfect English. Jake granted the request because Earth's leaders had already decided to hear what these visitors had to say. The Galactic Commerce Federation had sent word weeks ago that they wanted to meet with humanity's representatives. Nobody knew exactly what they wanted, but the message had been clear enough to understand that this was important. Ambassador Zektar stepped off his shuttle with 6 other aliens following behind him. The Viridian was tall and thin with blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights. His eyes were large and dark, and when he looked at Jake, the human felt like he was being studied by something very old and very intelligent. The other aliens were different species, each one stranger than the last. One looked like a walking crystal formation, while another seemed to be made of flowing liquid that somehow held its shape. Captain Lisa Warren arrived to escort the delegation to the meeting room. She had been chosen as Earth's chief negotiator because she spoke 4 alien languages and had spent years studying galactic politics. Lisa walked beside Zektar as they moved through the station's corridors, making small talk about human architecture and technology. The alien ambassador seemed polite but distant, as if he was going through the motions of diplomacy while thinking about something else entirely. Dr. Allen Price waited in the conference room with his team of xenobiologists and cultural experts. Allen had studied every piece of information humanity possessed about the Galactic Commerce Federation, which was not very much. The Federation was old, possibly thousands of years old, and controlled trade routes across most of the known galaxy. They had never shown much interest in humanity before, treating Earth as just another young species on the edge of civilized space. When the aliens entered the conference room, Allen noticed how they moved with perfect coordination, as if they had practiced this meeting many times before. Zektar took his place at the head of the table while his companions arranged themselves in a specific pattern around him. The crystal being produced a device that projected holographic images in the air above the table. The liquid alien spoke in musical tones that the translation system converted into numbers and statistics. Zek single quotes tar began the presentation without any preliminary greetings or pleasantries. The holographic display showed human space, all 47 systems that humanity had colonized or claimed. Red lines appeared on the map, marking trade routes and resource extraction sites. More red marks appeared at mining operations, manufacturing centers, and population centers. The alien ambassador's voice remained calm and neutral as he explained what the Federation wanted from humanity. The terms were simple but harsh. Humanity would surrender 70% of all resources from their controlled systems. Human ships would submit to Federation taxation on all trade routes. Human colonies would accept Federation observers who would monitor resource usage and population growth. Most importantly, humanity would accept permanent junior status within the Federation, with no voting rights and no say in galactic policy. Lisa Warren listened to every word while taking careful notes. She had expected demands, but nothing quite this extreme. The Federation wanted to turn humanity into a client species, dependent on galactic approval for everything, from trade agreements to colonial expansion. When Zektar finished speaking, Lisa asked the obvious question about what would happen if humanity refused these terms. The alien ambassador's expression did not change as he explained the consequences of refusal. The Federation would impose a complete economic blockade on human space. No alien ships would trade with human colonies. No Federation technology would be shared with human scientists. No alien species would be permitted to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Humanity would be completely isolated from galactic civilization until they changed their minds and accepted Federation terms. Dr. Price asked how many other species had faced similar ultimatums. Zektar replied that most intelligent species eventually joined the Federation under comparable arrangements. Some had initially resisted, but economic pressure and isolation had always convinced them to accept Federation membership. The galaxy was large and dangerous, and no species could survive alone for very long. Cooperation was essential for survival and prosperity. The meeting continued for several hours as the aliens answered questions about Federation policies and procedures. They explained that resource allocation was managed by ancient algorithms designed to prevent waste and conflict. Population growth was carefully monitored to avoid overconsumption of available resources. Trade routes were regulated to ensure fair distribution of goods across all member species. Everything was organized and efficient and peaceful. When the formal presentation ended, Zektar made one final statement that stayed with everyone in the room. He said that humans consumed resources at a rate that was unsustainable by galactic standards. Human colonial expansion was too aggressive and too rapid. Human technology development was proceeding without proper oversight or regulation. The Federation had observed humanity for decades and concluded that immediate intervention was necessary to prevent future problems. The alien delegation returned to their ships while Earth's leaders considered their response. President Helen Rodriguez called an emergency session of the United Earth Council, bringing together representatives from every human colony and outpost. The debate began immediately as delegates argued about whether humanity should submit to Federation demands or face the consequences of refusal. General Peter Hayes presented detailed military assessments, showing that human forces were vastly outnumbered by Federation fleets. Even if every human ship worked together, they could not match the combined military power of 800 Federation worlds. Admiral Karen Bell agreed with the general's analysis, pointing out that human technology was centuries behind Federation standards in most areas. A military confrontation would be suicide for humanity. Senator Paul Carter spoke in favor of accepting Federation terms, arguing that isolation would mean the end of human expansion and eventual stagnation. Human colonies on the outer rim were already dependent on alien technology for advanced manufacturing and medical equipment. Without access to galactic trade networks, these settlements would struggle to survive. Senator Carter believed that junior membership in the Federation was better than no membership at all. Dr. Amanda Foster disagreed with the senator's assessment. She presented research data showing that human technological advancement was proceeding much faster than galactic averages. Human scientists were developing new theories and applications at a rate that surprised even Federation observers. Dr. Foster argued that given enough time and resources, humanity could achieve technological independence without Federation assistance. Debate continued for 3 days as delegates examined every aspect of the Federation's ultimatum. Some argued for acceptance, while others demanded defiance. President Rodriguez listened to every argument and every piece of evidence before calling for a final vote. The decision was close, with many delegates changing their positions multiple times before the final tally was counted. Humanity chose defiance by a margin of 12 votes. The United Earth Council formally rejected the Federation's ultimatum and declared that humanity would chart its own course among the stars. President Rodriguez personally delivered the message to Ambassador Zektar, who received the news with what humans interpreted as surprise and disappointment. The alien ambassador warned that the galaxy had dealt with stubborn species before and always found ways to bring them into compliance. He expressed regret that humanity had chosen such a difficult path when cooperation would have been so much easier. Zektar's fleet departed from Earth orbit within hours of receiving humanity's answer, leaving behind only silence and uncertainty. About what would happen next, the Federation's response came quickly. Within 24 hours, every human trade route was blockaded by alien warships. Communications with friendly alien species were cut off completely. Federation technology that had been shared with human colonies stopped working as activation. Codes were remotely disabled. A galaxy had spoken clearly. Humanity would be starved into submission or left to die alone in the darkness between the stars. Captain Steve Morrison guided the Dakota's Dream through the asteroid field of the Kepler 442 system, searching for ore deposits that could keep his mining operation running. 6 months had passed since the Federation blockade began, and every human settlement was feeling the pressure. The Outer Rim colonies had been hit hardest because they depended on interstellar trade for everything from medical supplies to power cells. Steve's crew was working longer shifts and taking bigger risks to extract enough raw materials to keep their community alive. The mining vessel was old and patched together from salvaged parts, running on fusion drives that Federation engineers would have considered primitive and inefficient. Steve had bought the ship 15 years ago when he decided to try his luck in the outer systems, and he had been modifying it ever since. Engineer Betty Collins had installed new drilling equipment. Last year, while pilot Danny Wright had improved the navigation systems with components from 3 different manufacturers. The ship was not pretty, but it worked. Steve was examining mineral scan results when Danny's voice crackled over the intercom from the pilot station. 3 Federation patrol ships had appeared on the edge of the system and were moving toward the asteroid field. The alien vessels were sleek and powerful, each one larger than Dakota's Dream, and equipped with weapons that could reduce the mining ship to scrap metal in seconds. Steve ordered his crew to secure all equipment and prepare for evasive maneuvers. The lead Federation ship transmitted a demand for surrender in perfect English, ordering the human vessel to shut down its engines and submit to inspection. Federation regulations prohibited unauthorized mining in contested systems, and all human space was now considered contested territory. Steve responded by increasing power to the engines and diving deeper into the asteroid field, using the largest rocks as cover while he tried to figure out how to escape. The chase that followed revealed something that surprised everyone involved, including Steve and his crew. The Dakota's Dream should have been captured within minutes by ships with superior speed and firepower, but somehow the old mining vessel stayed ahead of its pursuers. Betty Collins redirected power from non-essential systems to boost engine output beyond normal safety limits. Danny Wright used his knowledge of asteroid trajectories to plot a course through gaps that the larger Federation ships could not follow. Most importantly, Steve made decisions that no Federation commander would have considered. When the patrol ships tried to box him in near a cluster of large asteroids, Steve ordered Danny to fire the mining charges they had been saving for ore extraction. The explosions did not damage the alien ships, but they created a cloud of debris that interfered with Federation sensors. While the patrol ships were blind, Dakota's Dream slipped away through a narrow canyon between 2 spinning asteroids. The Federation ships gave up the chase after 2 hours, probably because they could not believe that a primitive human mining vessel could outmaneuver their advanced patrol craft. Steve and his crew reached the edge of the system and jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of their escape back to the human settlements. The story spread quickly through the Outer Rim colonies, giving hope to miners and traders who had been avoiding Federation patrols for months. Similar incidents were happening throughout human space as ordinary people found ways to resist the blockade. Captain Roy Patterson commanded a freight convoy that used gravitational slingshots around gas giant planets to accelerate beyond Federation pursuit speeds. His ships carried food and medical supplies between isolated colonies, maintaining supply lines that the aliens thought they had cut. Roy's pilots learned to navigate by dead reckoning when Federation jamming made their instruments unreliable, and they developed new communication codes that could not be intercepted by alien monitoring. Stations. Commander Linda Shaw led an exploration mission that actually fought back against Federation forces and won. Her ship was conducting a survey of an uninhabited system when 3 alien cruisers arrived and demanded that she surrender all scientific data collected in Federation space. Linda refused and tried to run, but her ship was too slow to escape. Instead of giving up, she ordered her crew to improvise weapons from their scientific equipment and mining tools. The battle lasted 4 hours and ended when Linda's engineer managed to overload their hyperspace generator and use it as a weapon. The resulting energy discharge damaged one of the Federation cruisers badly enough that it had to withdraw for repairs. The other alien ships decided that capturing one human exploration vessel was not worth the risk of further damage to their fleet. Linda's crew returned home with proof that Federation ships could be hurt by human weapons, even improvised ones. News of these victories reached Earth and spread to human colonies throughout the galaxy. The Federation had expected quick surrender from a species that was obviously outmatched by superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Instead, they encountered stubborn resistance from humans, who seemed to get more determined as the situation became more desperate. Federation commanders reported that human tactics were unpredictable, and the human crews were willing to take risks that no rational species would consider. The alien leadership met in emergency session on Nexus Prime, the Federation capital, world located at the center of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Vekmer presented detailed reports from patrol commanders who had encountered human vessels over the past 6 months. The data showed that human ships were displaying tactical capabilities that exceeded their supposed technological limitations. Human crews were adapting their strategies faster than Federation. Analysts could predict their next moves. The Federation's top military minds could not understand how primitive human vessels were avoiding capture by advanced alien patrol craft. Federation ships had better sensors, faster engines, and more powerful weapons, but somehow the humans kept slipping away. Some patrol commanders reported that human pilots seemed to know exactly where Federation ships would be before they arrived. There. Others described human crews working together with perfect coordination, even when their communication systems had been damaged by alien jamming. Dr. Melther, the Federation's leading expert on primitive species, suggested that humans might possess some form of collective intelligence that activated under stress. Individual humans appeared to be clever but unremarkable when studied in laboratory settings. But when threatened as a group, they displayed problem-solving abilities that seemed to exceed the sum of their individual capabilities. This theory was controversial because it suggested that Federation scientists had fundamentally misunderstood human psychology and potential. Meanwhile, the blockade was having unexpected effects on human society. The crisis had forced every human settlement to become completely self-sufficient, and they were succeeding beyond their own expectations. Dr. Rachel Martin led research programs that developed closed-loop life support systems using only locally available materials. Her teams learned to grow food in environments that had never supported agriculture before, and they created recycling systems that recovered useful materials from waste products that had previously been discarded. Engineer Bill Santos revolutionized manufacturing processes by designing equipment that could work with whatever raw materials were available locally. His factories could produce everything from computer components to medical devices, using ore that mining crews extracted from asteroids and planetary surfaces. Bill's techniques eliminated the need for rare elements that had previously been imported from alien traders, making human settlements truly independent For the first time since interstellar colonization began, the most significant discovery came from psychologist Dr. Nancy Bell, who had been studying how humans responded to the stress of isolation and blockade. Her research showed that extreme pressure did not break human communities, but instead forged them into something stronger and more capable than they had been before. Under normal conditions, humans competed with each other for resources and status. Under siege conditions, they cooperated with unprecedented efficiency and shared knowledge freely to solve common problems. Dr. Bell's findings explained why human ships were performing better than their specifications suggested. Crews that had worked together for months under dangerous conditions developed an almost telepathic understanding of each other's thoughts and intentions. Pilots could anticipate what their engineers would do without verbal communication. Engineers could predict what problems their pilots would encounter before those problems became critical. The blockade was not destroying human civilization, but was instead creating a new kind of human society that was stronger and more adaptable than anything that had existed before. Federation intelligence analysts studied these reports with growing concern. The economic blockade that had forced dozens of species to surrender was instead making humanity more independent and more capable of resistance. Human colonies were not starving or collapsing as predicted, but were instead developing new technologies and new forms of social organization that threatened the established galactic order. Fleet Admiral Vekmer received authorization from the Federation High Council to begin military operations against 3 human settlements that had been particularly troublesome during the blockade. 2 years of economic pressure had failed to bring humanity to its knees, and human raiders were actually becoming more effective at avoiding Federation patrols. The High Council decided that a show of force was necessary to demonstrate the consequences of continued resistance to Federation authority. The first target was New Colorado, a mining world in the Tau Ceti system that supplied raw materials to a dozen human colonies. The settlement had been expanding its operations despite the blockade, using improvised equipment to extract ore from deposits that Federation surveys had declared unprofitable. Worse, New Colorado's miners had been sharing their techniques with other human settlements, spreading knowledge that threatened Federation control of galactic resource extraction. War leader Vashtak commanded the assault fleet that approached New Colorado with 12 heavy cruisers and 40 escort vessels. The alien commander expected to find a desperate human settlement ready to surrender after 2 years of isolation and economic hardship. Federation intelligence reports suggested that the mining colony was barely surviving on recycled equipment, an improvised technology that could not possibly stand against professional military forces. Instead, Vashtak encountered Colonel Mike Turner's Colonial Defense Force, which had spent 2 years preparing for exactly this situation. The humans had not wasted their time hoping for rescue or negotiating for better terms. They had used every day of the blockade to study Federation tactics and develop countermeasures that took advantage of human strengths while avoiding direct confrontation with superior alien firepower. The battle began when Federation assault shuttles descended toward New Colorado's main settlement, expecting to find civilian miners hiding in underground shelters. Instead, they flew into a carefully prepared trap that turned the colony's mining equipment into weapons of war. Explosive charges that had been designed for asteroid excavation became anti-aircraft missiles guided by targeting systems cobbled together from surveying equipment and communication relays. Human defenders used tactics that made no sense to the alien attackers, but proved devastatingly effective in practice. Fighter pilots like Lieutenant Sarah Parker did not try to dogfight with superior Federation interceptors, but instead flew kamikaze runs that delivered boarding parties directly onto enemy vessels. These suicide attacks were not intended to destroy the human fighters, but to get small teams of Marines onto alien ships where they could cause maximum damage to critical systems. The Federation forces found themselves fighting an enemy that treated conventional military doctrine as a starting point rather than a fixed set of rules. Human Marines led by Sergeant Bobby Martinez used mining explosives to breach alien ship hulls and then fought hand-to-hand combat in corridors designed for species with different physical capabilities. The humans were smaller and more agile than most Federation troops, and they had trained extensively in zero-gravity combat using techniques that took advantage of their unique physiology. On the planetary surface, the situation was even worse for the alien invaders. New Colorado's civilian population had been organized into resistance cells that operated independently but supported each other when necessary. Engineer Carla Jenkins led a team that had converted industrial equipment into weapons that fired streams of molten metal extracted from mining furnaces. Teacher Bobby Martinez organized children as communication runners who used tunnel systems that connected every building in the settlement. What most shocking to the Federation forces was that the humans did not retreat when faced with overwhelming odds. Military doctrine throughout the galaxy assumed that rational species would surrender when defeat became inevitable, but the humans of New Colorado kept fighting even when their situation appeared hopeless. When Federation troops finally captured the main settlement, they found it booby-trapped and abandoned, with the entire human population having disappeared into wilderness areas that Federation sensors could not effectively monitor. The second assault target was Haven's Rest, an agricultural world that supplied food to human colonies throughout the Outer Rim systems. Administrator Janet Murphy had spent the blockade years organizing the colonists into cells that could operate independently, even if Central Command was destroyed. The farming community had been transformed into a distributed network of resistance fighters who knew every square meter of their territory and had prepared defensive positions in every field and forest. War leader Vashtak's forces landed on Haven's Rest expecting to face farmers with primitive weapons, but instead encountered an entire population that had weaponized everything from crop dusting, aircraft to greenhouse atmospheric systems. The humans had learned to use agricultural chemicals as weapons, creating toxic clouds that disabled Federation troops without permanent harm to local ecosystems. Farm vehicles had been converted into mobile weapons platforms that could disappear into crop fields and emerge anywhere the defenders needed fire support. The fighting on Haven's Rest became a nightmare of guerrilla warfare that Federation forces were not trained to handle. Human defenders led by farmer Tony Walsh used irrigation systems to flood areas where alien troops were advancing, forcing them into kill zones where converted farm equipment could destroy entire squads. Children as young as 12 years old served as scouts and messengers, using their knowledge of hidden paths and secret shelters to coordinate resistance activities across the entire planet. Federation commanders found that their advanced sensors and communication systems provided little advantage against an enemy that seemed to blend invisibly into the local environment. Human resistance fighters could appear anywhere without warning, strike at vulnerable targets, and then vanish before Federation forces could respond effectively. The aliens controlled the major settlements and transportation hubs, but they could not move safely through rural areas where the majority of the human population lived and worked. The third target was Omega Point, a research station that had been conducting experiments in quantum physics and exotic matter manipulation. Dr. Frank Rodriguez had discovered how to convert the facility's experimental equipment into weapons that could disrupt Federation shields from distances that should have been impossible according to known physical laws. The research station's defensive capabilities were entirely theoretical until the Federation fleet arrived to test them. The attack on Omega Point never reached the planetary surface because Dr. Rodriguez's quantum resonance projectors proved capable of affecting Federation ships while they were still in orbit. The alien fleet lost 3 vessels to energy discharges that passed through their deflector shields, as if those defenses did not exist. The surviving Federation ships retreated to a safe distance and called for reinforcements, but war leader Vashtak decided that the research station was too dangerous to assault with conventional forces. News of these battles spread throughout, both human and alien space, carried by traders and diplomats who had witnessed the fighting or heard reports from Federation military commanders. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive species had not only resisted Federation military action, but had actually defeated professional alien forces in direct combat. The implications were staggering for both human morale and galactic political stability. Human settlements throughout the Outer Rim systems received detailed reports about the defensive tactics that had proven effective against Federation forces. Mining colonies began converting their equipment into weapon systems, based on designs developed at New Colorado. Agricultural worlds implemented the distributed resistance network that had worked so well at Haven's Rest. Research facilities started experimenting with exotic technologies that might provide new defensive capabilities like those demonstrated. At Omega Point, the Federation leadership faced a crisis unlike anything they had encountered in thousands of years of galactic dominance. Member species were asking uncomfortable questions about why the most advanced military forces in the galaxy could not defeat a primitive human mining colony. Some worlds were quietly beginning to develop their own defensive capabilities, inspired by human examples of successful resistance against impossible odds. Most disturbing to Federation authorities was the realization that human tactics could be copied by other species who had previously accepted Federation dominance without question. The economic blockade that was supposed to starve humanity into submission had instead created a military threat that endangered the stability of the entire galactic order. Human resistance was not just about refusing Federation demands, but was actively inspiring rebellion throughout civilized space. War leader Vashtak submitted his final report to Fleet Admiral Vekmar with recommendations that military action against human settlements be suspended indefinitely. The costs of fighting humans were becoming prohibitive, and the political consequences of continued failure were threatening Federation authority throughout the galaxy. The aliens had learned that some species could not be conquered by conventional means, but they had not yet figured out how to deal with this new reality. The failure of military action against human settlements triggered a crisis within the Federation that threatened to tear apart the Galactic Alliance. Member species who had accepted Federation authority for thousands of years began questioning the wisdom of continuing the conflict with humanity. The Crystalline Collective sent diplomatic messages expressing concern about the escalating violence, while the Aquatic Hegemony openly debated whether to withdraw their support for the blockade entirely. Researcher Prime Keflin received emergency authorization to conduct intensive studies of human behavior and capabilities, using the Federation's most advanced scientific equipment. The High Council needed to understand how primitive humans were defeating their military forces before other species began copying human tactics and threatening galactic stability. Keflon assembled a team of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists, psychologists, and military analysts to study every aspect of human society and warfare. The research team's first breakthrough came from analyzing communication intercepts from human settlements during the recent battles. Dr. Veltar, a specialist in primitive cognition, discovered that human thought patterns changed dramatically when the species was threatened as a group. Individual humans displayed average intelligence when isolated, but when working together under stress, they seemed to achieve a form of collective problem-solving that exceeded the capabilities of any known species. Dr. Ashley Peterson had been captured during the Haven's Rest assault and became an unwilling subject for Federation xenopsychological research. The human scientist was held in comfortable conditions aboard a Federation research vessel while alien experts studied her reactions to various stimuli and stress situations. Dr. Milther, the Federation's most renowned expert on primitive species, led the examination with assistance from specialists in neural mapping and cognitive analysis. The aliens discovered that human brain activity increased exponentially when Dr. Peterson was presented with problems that required creative solutions under time pressure. Her neural networks did not just store and retrieve information like those of other species, but actually reconfigured themselves in real time when faced with new challenges. The human brain appeared to be capable of forming new connections and developing new capabilities even during adult life, something that Federation science had believed was impossible for any intelligent species. Most significantly, Dr. Peterson's cognitive abilities improved when she was allowed to communicate with other human prisoners who had been captured during various battles. The humans did not just share information, but seemed to enhance each other's thinking processes through some mechanism that Federation scientists could not understand. When working together, the human prisoners solved complex problems faster than Federation experts using advanced computer systems. Meanwhile, on Earth, the isolation imposed by the blockade had produced technological breakthroughs that surprised even human scientists. Dr. Chuck Williams led a research team that had developed faster-than-light communication, using quantum entanglement principles that Federation physics declared impossible at macro scales. The human scientists had not tried to prove that their theories were correct according to established science, but had simply experimented until they found techniques that worked in practice. Engineer Paula Davis had revolutionized manufacturing by developing processes that could convert raw asteroid material into advanced electronic components without the rare elements that Federation technology required. Her techniques used principles of molecular engineering that alien scientists had studied for centuries without achieving practical applications. The humans had succeeded where the Federation had failed because they approached problems without preconceptions about what should be possible. The most important discovery came when Captain Gary Thompson led a reconnaissance mission that observed a Federation supply depot without being detected. Instead of attacking the facility, the human team spent weeks studying alien logistics, technology, and communication protocols. Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Samantha White recorded everything about how Federation forces operated when they thought no one was watching. The intelligence gathered by Thompson's team revealed truths about the Federation that changed humanity's understanding of galactic civilization. The aliens were not the unified, technologically advanced society they appeared to be, but rather a collection of species that had stopped innovating thousands of years ago. Federation technology was ancient and had remained essentially unchanged for millennia because member species had been discouraged from pursuing independent research that might destabilize the established order. Dr. Kevin Miller analyzed the intelligence data and discovered that Federation control was maintained through economic leverage and overwhelming numbers rather than superior capability. The aliens had grown complacent after centuries of dealing with species that always surrendered when faced with impossible odds. No one had ever tested Federation military doctrine against an enemy that refused to follow predictable patterns of behavior. Most crucially, the human analysis revealed fundamental weaknesses in Federation technology that had never been exploited because previous enemies had always given up before discovering them. Federation shields were designed to deflect conventional weapons, but could be disrupted by quantum resonance effects that human scientists had stumbled upon during their isolation experiments. Federation sensors were optimized for detecting known energy signatures, but could be fooled by technologies that operated outside established physical parameters. The intelligence breakthrough came when Lieutenant White decoded Federation military communications and discovered that alien commanders were reporting their encounters with human forces to superiors who did not believe the reports were accurate. Federation leadership thought their field commanders were exaggerating human capabilities because the idea that primitive humans could outfight advanced alien forces was too absurd to accept. This disconnect between reality and perception meant that the Federation was not adapting its tactics to counter human innovations. Dr. Amanda Foster presented her research findings to President Helen Rodriguez and the United Earth Council, revealing that humanity possessed advantages that no other species in the galaxy had ever developed. Human creativity and adaptability were not just different from alien thought patterns, but were actually superior for solving problems that required original thinking. The Federation's strength lay in applying proven solutions to familiar situations. But they were helpless when faced with challenges that required innovation. The revelation that changed everything was Foster's discovery that Federation species had been deliberately prevented from developing their full potential. The Galactic Alliance maintained stability by discouraging member worlds from pursuing research that might lead to social or technological disruption. Species that showed too much creativity or independence were guided into roles that used their abilities without threatening the established order. This meant that the Federation contained hundreds of species with capabilities similar to humanity's. But those abilities had been suppressed for so long that most aliens had forgotten they possessed them. The Crystalline Collective had once been master engineers before being assigned to mining operations. The aquatic hegemony had developed advanced biological sciences before being restricted to food production and environmental management. Every member species had been reduced to a specialized role that prevented them from achieving their full potential. Human resistance was dangerous to the Federation, not because humans were uniquely powerful, but because human success proved that the galactic order was built on lies about what was possible for intelligent species to achieve. If humans could develop faster-than-light communication and exotic manufacturing techniques while under blockade, and other species could do the same if they were allowed to try. The Federation's greatest fear was not human military capabilities, but human inspiration spreading to member worlds. Captain Gary Thompson's team made one final discovery that sealed humanity's understanding of their situation. Federation records showed that dozens of species had been offered the same ultimatum that humans had rejected, and every single one had eventually accepted Federation terms after being subjected to economic pressure and military intimidation. Humanity was the first species in galactic history to maintain resistance long enough to discover the Federation's fundamental weaknesses. The aliens had expected humans to follow the same pattern as every other species. Initial resistance followed by gradual acceptance of inevitable defeat. Instead, humans had used their isolation to become stronger and more capable while simultaneously discovering that their enemies were not as powerful as they pretended to be. The Federation faced a threat unlike anything in their recorded history, not because humans were invincible, but because human success could inspire galaxy-wide rebellion against the established order. President Rodriguez convened an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership to discuss the implications of these discoveries. The Federation was vulnerable, but they still commanded vast resources and could potentially destroy human civilization before other species had time to rebel. Commander Tony Jackson received his orders from Earth Command on a cold morning when the orbital defense platforms were running silent to avoid Federation detection. Operation Breakthrough was not an attack in any conventional sense, but something far more dangerous to the established galactic order, a demonstration that would shatter the illusion of Federation invincibility forever. Jackson's small fleet consisted of 12 vessels that represented 3 years of desperate innovation, each ship a testament to human ingenuity born from isolation and necessity. The flagship vessel, New Horizon, had been built from the salvaged remains of 3 different human ships, welded together with techniques that Federation engineers would have declared impossible. Dr. Jennifer. Walsh had spent 18 months converting the ship's cargo bay into a quantum resonance laboratory, using theories that existed nowhere in Federation science databases. The other vessels in Jackson's fleet were equally unconventional, ranging from converted mining ships to repurposed research vessels that had been transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Supreme Admiral Zorthic commanded the Federation defense fleet that guarded Nexus Prime, the capital world that had remained unconquered for over 10,000 years of galactic history. The alien commander had been briefed about human capabilities, but still expected to face a desperate suicide mission launched by a species that had finally realized the futility of continued resistance. Zorthic's forces included over 200 warships representing dozens of different Federation number species, equipped with the most advanced weapons and defensive systems in the galaxy. The human fleet approached Nexus Prime openly, making no attempt to hide their presence or intentions. Federation sensors detected the approaching vessels when they were still days away from the capital system, giving Zorthic ample time to organize his defenses and position his ships for maximum tactical advantage. The Supreme Admiral deployed his forces in a formation that had proven effective against rebel fleets for thousands of years, creating overlapping fields of fire that no enemy had ever successfully penetrated. Jackson's response to the Federation deployment revealed the first hint that this would not be a conventional battle. Instead of forming attack formations or attempting to find weaknesses in alien defenses, the human ships began moving in patterns that seemed to dance around the edge of Federation sensor range. Captain Lisa Davis piloted her converted research vessel through gravitational fields that should have torn her ship apart, while Commander Gary Peterson used quantum tunneling effects to appear and disappear from Federation targeting systems. Engagement that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic military history. The human vessels did not fight the Federation fleet in any traditional sense, but instead demonstrated technologies and tactics that challenged fundamental assumptions about what was possible in space warfare. Jackson's ships used principles of quantum mechanics and exotic physics to move through Federation defenses as if those barriers did not exist. Dr. Walsh's quantum resonance projector reached full power as the human fleet approached the inner system where Nexus Prime orbited, its ancient star. The device had been designed not as a weapon, but as a communication system that could broadcast messages directly into any electronic system within range, bypassing all security protocols and defensive measures. Walsh had spent months perfecting the technique during humanity's isolation, learning to manipulate quantum fields in ways that Federation science considered theoretically impossible. The message that transmitted across the Federation capital system was simple but revolutionary. President Helen Rodriguez spoke directly to the crews of every Federation warship, her words appearing simultaneously on bridge displays, personal communication devices, and even emergency broadcast systems that had been offline for centuries. The message bypassed Federation military censorship and reached every sentient being within a dozen light years of Nexus Prime. Rodriguez's words were carefully chosen to avoid threatening Federation forces while making humanity's capabilities unmistakably clear. She explained that humans had no desire to conquer or destroy the Federation, but wanted only to trade freely and share the galaxy with other intelligent species. Humanity would not accept slavery or subjugation, but they were willing to cooperate with any species that treated them as equals rather than subjects. The demonstration continued as Jackson's fleet performed maneuvers that violated known laws of physics while remaining completely peaceful. Human ships passed through Federation battle formations without firing a shot, proving that alien defenses were useless against technologies that operated outside conventional parameters. The message was clear to every Federation commander. If humans had wanted to destroy the capital fleet, they could have done so without suffering a single casualty. Supreme Admiral Zorthic found himself in a situation that no Federation commander had faced in millennia. His forces were powerless to stop an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules, and his superiors were demanding explanations for events that challenged everything the Federation believed about technological limitations and military capability. The human demonstration was proving to the entire galaxy that Federation dominance was based on illusion rather than genuine superiority. The political consequences of the demonstration spread faster than the news of humanity's technological breakthroughs. Federation member species throughout the galaxy received reports about human capabilities from their own military commanders, who could not deny what they had witnessed with their own sensors. The carefully maintained fiction that Federation technology represented the pinnacle of possible achievement crumbled as species after species realized they had been deliberately kept ignorant of their own potential. Ambassador Zektar, who had delivered the Federation's original ultimatum to humanity 3 years earlier, arrived at Earth aboard a small diplomatic vessel to request a private meeting with President Rodriguez. The Viridian ambassador came not as a representative of Federation authority, but as a desperate politician trying to prevent the collapse of the galactic order that had maintained peace for thousands of years. Zektar's message was simple. His species wanted to negotiate a separate agreement with humanity before the Federation completely disintegrated. The Viridian Empire's decision to break ranks triggered an avalanche of similar requests from other Federation members who recognized that the old system was dying and wanted to position themselves advantageously in whatever came next. The Crystalline Collective began developing new technologies based on human theories that they had been forbidden to pursue for centuries. The aquatic hegemony started questioning why they had accepted economic subordination when their biological sciences could have made them the dominant species in their region of space. Within 6 months of Operation Breakthrough, the Federation faced the greatest crisis in its recorded history. Member worlds were demanding to know why they had been told that innovation beyond certain parameters was impossible when humans routinely achieved the impossible. Species that had been assigned specialized roles within the galactic economy began developing capabilities that threatened the established division of labor. Most dangerously, younger species that had never joined the Federation started forming alliances based on human examples of successful independence. The old Federation did not collapse suddenly, but gradually transformed into something completely different. The economic blockade that was supposed to force human surrender ended not with alien victory, but with the emergence of a new galactic order based on cooperation between equals rather than domination by a central authority. Species that had forgotten their capacity for innovation rediscovered abilities they had not used for millennia. President Rodriguez addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from the same chamber where Federation leaders had once made decisions for hundreds of subjugated worlds. The new organization included representatives from species that had been considered too primitive for Federation membership, alongside former Federation leaders who had adapted to the changed reality. The message Rodriguez delivered was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had heard before. Diversity of thought and approach was strength, not weakness. The transformation was not without conflict, as some Federation hardliners attempted to maintain the old system through military force, but these efforts failed when their own member species refused to support them. The human demonstration had proven that technological superiority belonged to innovative thinkers rather than ancient bureaucracies, and no species wanted to be on the wrong side of that equation when the next crisis arrived. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in the observation deck of the first mixed human-alien research station, watching as former enemies worked together to explore possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone. The facility orbited a neutron star whose exotic properties provided opportunities for experiments that pushed the boundaries of known science. Human creativity combined with alien knowledge and resources was producing discoveries at a rate that surprised everyone involved. The galaxy had learned that some species could not be broken by traditional methods, only transformed through inspiration and example.